Welcome to the Monday Monologue. Sorry for the drought in content, but had a busy schedule at work this week and really just couldn't fit in any content that I felt was going to be meaningful. But we're going to jump back in it this week, and this is going to be a really great episode of the monologue. So one of the things, we did finish up our little simple preamp, and just from an afternoon of listening to this thing, it really sounds good. I will say with the 12AX7 and the cathode bypass capacitor, probably got more gain than anybody would ever need. So I want to experiment around with different tubes. A 12AU7 seemed to work good with this. Also want to try it without the cathode bypass capacitor. One of the viewers on the forum said put a switch to switch that bypass cap in and out, or the pair of them. Probably going to do that so we can experiment with them on and off easier. The other thing that I want to do is I want to play with this thing driving this amp, which is a tube amp which has fairly high impedance load or input. Also want to try it with 100K, 50K, because this doesn't have a cathode follower. People are saying won't work, it's going to be super distorted. We're going to find out whether that's really needed or not. The other thing is hearing people say this volume pot being on the output is going to cause impedance mismatching and distortion. We're going to test that. I've learned that there's a lot of theoretical stuff that people say won't work or isn't going to sound good. An example is my 6SQ7 amp. When I was designing that, had half a dozen people saying, oh, plate resistance is too high, there's no way that's going to work, driving an EL34, blah, blah, blah. Freaking thing sounds fantastic. And I want to dig in and see how much that really makes a difference and how much measurable change in distortion you see from these things that people are saying make a huge difference. Because if you're talking about a solid state amp that has 0.001% distortion, yeah, that's going to be a big jump up if it's a 0.002% distortion or 0.02. But if you're talking about tube amps that already have a couple of percent distortion, if you're adding 0.01% distortion, you'll never hear it. So we're going to really dive into that and get to the bottom of this whole how critical impedance stuff applies when we're talking about tube amps. I want to learn too. Maybe shocked, may go, oh crap, that is a big deal. So, hey, we're going to see. So the big topic for today is mastering of music. And by that I mean the conversion of the master tapes to either vinyl or a CD. And obviously they're very different. And back when vinyl was all there was, people that were doing that, man, they were pros at it. They knew exactly how to make vinyl sound great, for the most part. And then when CDs came out, some of y'all probably remember some of those early CDs sounded really bad, but some of them sounded really good. And that was all related to the mastering. And so I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what's good and bad. And maybe in future episodes, I'll kind of go through some of the things that I've experimented with and found good and bad ones so you don't make the same mistake I did. So, Amy Winehouse. Freaking amazing voice, amazing album. This recent pressing that you can get on Amazon, that's this pink colored one, it's garbage. It sounds horrible. And I don't know if they just took the CD and just cut it to vinyl or used some really garbage RIAA equalization or what they did, but it's God, it's hard to describe. It sounds like it's just bzzz over, the whole track. And or like everything's got a fuzz filter to it. It sounds horrible. Don't waste your money. The next one, this is one of my favorites for nostalgia, is the original Charlie Brown Christmas soundtrack with the Vince Giuliano, I'm sure I mispronounced that trio. And first I bought the CD, and it sounds terrible. It's distorted, it's muted, it just sounds terrible. So I went for seeing what the vinyl sounds like this, and this is a recent pressing that I got off Amazon that's on green vinyl. It sounds fantastic. I mean, it sounds like you're in the room with these guys, like it was recorded yesterday. And the CD, totally unlistenable too. Vinyl sounds wonderful, but this was mastered back when vinyl was it. And so this was probably designed to be heard on vinyl, obviously. And whoever did the CD, obviously they were being cheap and they just threw something together. And so, again, it's all down to the mastering. So, another one that I really struggled finding a good CD was the Eagles Hotel California. And this was before I really got my turntable all going and everything. And all the recent or even the early CDs of that album, they are terrible. I mean, if you got a crappy system, or I guess if you're listening to it in your car or a boombox, it sounds okay. But when you put it in a good system with a nice tube amp and some good speakers, you just can't enjoy it. And so I did find there was I can't remember what it was, a DCC or a Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs version, one of those gold discs. And man, they're stupid expensive now because they've been out of print for probably 10 years or 15 years, maybe longer than that. But I found a good copy of one of those, and I think it was about $100 for the CD. And that sounds good. And so, same format, different mastering, nothing different. I mean, they gold plate the discs or whatever, but that's not what makes it sound good. It's the remastering from the original master tapes to a digital format. They did it right. So I did go ahead and order the first pressing of the LP, which is also supposed to sound really good. And that's one of the things I've learned about vintage music. Usually if you go back and get the first pressing, it's going to sound good. Early Michael Jackson albums, go get the original pressing. It'll blow your mind how good it sounds. The newer pressings sound like garbage. Another one was Who's Next the Who. CD doesn't sound right. Tried to find a good vintage LP. Think all the ones that I was getting sounded just worn out. Like, sure, people listen to them to death, probably with a crappy needle, and they just sound all muffled and just didn't sound good. So I took a gamble, ordered one off Amazon, and the nice thing about ordering vinyl off Amazon, the new stuff, if it doesn't sound good and it's a bad pressing or bad mastering, you just send it back. No questions asked, they give you your money back. So don't be afraid of buying new vinyl on Amazon, because you can send it back, and that Amy Winehouse is going back. So finally, we're going to do our recommendation of the week. I don't know where I saw somebody recommend this album. And I'm not going to even try to pronounce all these people's names, but Hudson. Great jazz album. The mastering's fantastic. Pressing's good. Super clean. I mean, this is a really nice sounding LP. It's a 2 LP set. They didn't try to compress it all into like 1 LP, which I think helped the sound quality. Can't remember where I found this. I don't think it was available on normal outlets. Might have had to get it off eBay. Might have had it shipped from Europe. I can't remember where I got it, but it's worth hunting this down. That's what the back looks like. So here's my recommendation for the week for some cool jazz music. So you're probably sitting here going, okay, what is this big thing sitting here? Well, this is a just ancient AM radio that a friend of mine asked me to come look at, and I decided I'd go ahead and try to get this thing working for her. And the knob isn't connected, probably not connected to the capacitor inside. It's probably got a variable capacitor that does the tuning. Needle's not moving, so the little rope thing's probably broken and stuff. So obviously it's an old tube amp. It was an old battery amp, and she said it came from her grandfather's farmhouse that didn't have any electricity. And back then, you have to remember, electricity wasn't real common, especially when you got outside of the city. So for radios to work, they had to be battery powered. So I'm going to try to come up with a conversion circuit to do line voltage to what the battery should be. I found a Sam's repair PDF schematic and all the stuff that you should need to get this thing working again. So I think this is going to be a fun project. Not sure when I'm going to get on this, but this is maybe a little new side thing that we can do on the channel, is some vintage radio repair. I know that's kind of a whole different little side hobby, and it's not going to be obviously hi-fi quality, but I think it could be a fun little kind of a side thing to get into on the channel. I do have all the parts here to get started on my 47 amp. The other thing that I'm going to be doing here soon is I'm going to build a big brother to the 6BM8 amp. We're going to build basically the same small footprint amplifier. Instead of a 5x9, it's going to be on a 6x10 chassis. We're going to go with a tube rectifier. We're going to go with 15 watt output transformers instead of the 10 watt. And then I'm going to compare the two. So one of the reasons people keep saying, when are you going to put the bomb up for the 6BM8? I want to make sure that I'm putting up the best version of this for you guys to build. And I also want to compare how much difference does the 10 watt versus those 15 watt Ed cores sound. The price is only like $5 difference, but they're bigger and make the amp a little bigger. I want to hear the difference between the two, and then we're going to finalize that project and say, here's what you need to build. So that's going to be coming up soon, probably before we dive into the 47 amp. So this year has got off to a little slower start than I wanted, but between some work-related stuff and other commitments that I haven't been able to really jump into these projects as much as I wanted to. Plus, this preamp got me sidetracked. I need to start focusing on these things y'all want to see. But hopefully, this is going to be a fun learning experience that's going to be worth diving into this, and we can use what we learn from this in future projects. So I think it's worth it. Anyway, hope you're enjoying my channel. If you are, please subscribe. Please consider donating at the link in the description. That helps me buy supplies and things to do all these projects. Like the video. Get some merch. You want one of these cool t-shirts. And we'll see you next week on the Monday Monologue.